Well, welcome back to another episode of the Always About People show. Welcome to 2022. Can you believe it? It's already another year. I can't believe it. Feels like it was just last year. Well, maybe bad joke, but welcome to 2022. And as most people do when they step into a new year, they start thinking through goals and expectations and desires for what they want to accomplish in this next year. And so we thought we would kick off the year in this first episode talking about goals. Obviously, our title today, Being as Good as Your Goals, is just a fun way of talking through, the human mind and the ability for us to imagine and perceive and create images for ourselves, and the link between what we think about and how we actually behave is both scientific, it's proven, and it's fascinating. And so while many of us stepped into this new year putting forth our New Year's resolutions, most people will fall short within a couple weeks. And we want to have a conversation today about how you can set those goals, how those goals become behaviors and improvements and successful outcomes in your own life and in your personal life and in your business life. And we want to have this conversation today, and I'm excited about our guest. I've got a friend joining me today. Beamer Wilson is a friend, but I also have a big announcement to make. Beamer has joined the team at Always About People, and I am so excited for you to meet her. I'm excited for many of my clients to meet her. Beamer and I have known each other for a number of years. We've been able to work together before. She brings an incredible amount of wisdom, experience, and knowledge and skill to the art of loving people well. So I am excited to have Beamer on the show today. Would you help me welcome Beamer to the Always About People show and to Always About People? It's so good to have you, Beamer.
Thanks. Glad to be here reporting live in Los Angeles.
I know. I'm like coming live from Charlotte, North Carolina, and 3 hours different coming live from LA. I guess you're having breakfast and I'm having lunch, but
First cup of coffee.
There you go. But Beamer, it's so good to have you. Obviously, we want to have a conversation today, but more importantly, I want to publicly say I'm just so thrilled that you have joined the team. And I'm excited about all that we get to accomplish together through Always About People.
Me too. It's going to be fun.
It's a big year. All right, let's tackle probably the biggest question first, which is Beamer.
Yes.
Is her name really Beamer?
It is.
And so I think what I would love for you to do is for all the people who are asking that same question, help them with where Beamer came from.
Sure. So whenever I was a freshman in college, my roommate's name was also Brittany, which is my first name. My initials are BMW. So Beamer was born then, and I've just gone by Beamer ever since. So I've officially been Beamer longer than I have been Brittany Wilson. So there you go.
All right. So the Beamer, the BMW, what series are you?
You know, I like to say that my name is high maintenance, but I am not. So I don't really have an answer for you, truly.
All right. So Beamer is not high maintenance, but her name is. So I don't know. You should be some maybe SUV, sport utility vehicle.
I like that. That sounds about right.
She's the X5. Okay. Well, Beamer, great to have you on the show. We want to talk about something that will hopefully help people. And I know that you've been studying this, you've been thinking about it, we've been just talking about it, but being as good as your goals, in the short description, what I mentioned was, hey, this is about having a clear image for the future. It's about focus. It's about determining your outcomes. It's about the human mind and self-talk and the power of that. It's about the power of unrealistic goals when everybody's telling you set realistic goals.
Right.
And I mentioned the irony of focus, that really what we focus on can actually become the result.
Exactly.
And so I just want to jump into this conversation because I believe that there are people who have set some goals for themselves at the end of last year. And yet, most people probably are wondering, how long am I going to be able to keep these?
Right.
And then there are probably some people who has set goals in the past, either professionally, personally, or even corporately, and they didn't accomplish them.
Mm-hmm.
And so they've just stopped setting goals. I guess what I would love to ask you is, for those who have set goals,
Right.
how can we help them keep those goals? Because being as good as your goals means that, gosh, we can help these people actually become better. So
Right.
what would you say? And we'll be going back and forth during this conversation. Well, welcome to a team meeting at Always About People. We're just going to have a conversation.
This really is how it goes most of the time. So I think that in goal setting at an individual level, something to consider is that it's more about the habits that you are developing instead of just putting a goal out there. Goals are great, but like you said, it often can yo-yo back and forth in terms of where am I actually going with this? So if we can really focus on what habits we want to have developed, that's ultimately what is going to help make those goals a baseline so that you're able to build off of it, ultimately becoming better long term.
Okay, so let's talk about habits for a second then,
Mm-hmm.
because most people have bad habits. And
Right.
in order to even put a new habit in place, something has to change.
Right.
So, in the book Power of Habit, there's a cue, there's a response, and there's a reward.
Right.
And that cue sets up our typical response, and then we
Mm-hmm.
receive a reward. And in order to change any habit, we have to change that response. In the
Right.
world of psychology and thinking, sometimes they'll call it a crisis catalyst that creates a change in a habit, because without a crisis, you're just going to revert back to what you've always done.
Exactly.
And so I guess the question is, if it involves a habit, how do we even create good habits? Where do we start?
Decision. I really believe this is just me. I can be wrong in this. I'm open to my mind changing, and it might in a few years. Who knows? But that choice is an illusion. Truly. It's like you can have a choice, but ultimately it's going to be the decision that is going to be the thing that pushes us forward. Commitment is execution. That's really what it is. And so whenever we make a decision on, I want to, like it's the new year, so I want to eat better. I
Yep.
want to make these financial goals this year. I want to pay this debt off. I want to save this amount of money, whatever it is. Ultimately, you are committed to it, but there's a cost associated with that commitment,
Yep.
which is typically a little bit painful because you're ultimately deciding, I'm not going to have bread with this meal. Instead, I'm going to have the broccoli instead of,
What a
buying.
terrible trade-off.
I know, right? Put cheese on it. It's fine.
Yeah.
Cut the carbs. I'm not going to have these shoes. Instead, I'm going to put this money aside for this long-term effect. But obviously, I can only speak for myself. I cannot speak for you. I live in a microwave generation. Love to just like throw something in and then get the reward immediately. But to have healthy habits, it's making the commitment that I'm more committed to my future self than I am to this like present satisfaction.
I think that's a great point. And if I could maybe say it one other way, I would say that you have to believe as an individual that the result of changing will be better than staying the same.
Correct.
And I honestly don't think people believe that. So you said sort of it's the decision
Mm-hmm.
versus just the choice, but it's a decision. And I think what I would say is it's that moment you decide the benefit I'm going to get from eating broccoli will be better than whatever result I get from eating more bread.
Correct.
whatever that looks like. And I think people go into New Year's resolutions with this dream of, I think this is just the right thing to do. I'm supposed to set goals and New Year's
Yeah.
resolutions, but they haven't actually made the decision that this is going to be better for me.
Right.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
No, it's something that it really bothers me whenever it's like with just goal setting. If the goal is just to meet the goal, because that's not where change happens. And like I said at the beginning, that's how you get this kind of like rolling hill or like yo yo kind of diet thing where it's like, okay, cool. Like I've lost the 20 pounds. Now I can eat whatever I want. And then you gain it all back. And it's like, oh man, I have to go back to this. But you didn't have the foundation because the commitment and the habit wasn't there. And so I know that we'll probably go into talking how this impacts business and corporate cultures and like the demographic of work. But our goals cannot just be a shiny object that we're running to. Our goal is a baseline that we continue to build off of. Those are good goals. Otherwise, it's just a shiny object, which makes us feel good whenever we accomplish it, but then that's also all we have at the end of it.
Wow. Yeah. I think that's great. And that actually goes with a quote that I've been thinking about for the last few days. It was Earl Nightingale that said, success is the progressive realization, and I've changed a few of his words, but the progressive realization of a worthwhile, predetermined goal. So there's a choice, then there's a decision,
Right.
and success comes in the progressive realization. So instead of just the shiny object out there that I'm aiming at, I'm progressively moving towards this worthwhile, predetermined choice or goal.
Right.
I
I love
think
that because it's the commitment to the journey instead of the destination.
yes.
Mhm.
And that commitment to the journey sometimes takes time. And
Right.
so your 2 weeks of eating broccoli or 2 weeks of working out will not get you to the worthwhile predetermined goal.
Right.
Now, I think one of the other interesting things that I've been studying, Beamer, is the power of our mind and our self-talk and
Mhm.
how that impacts our behaviors. So
Right.
we know that what happens is that when we access an event
Mhm.
or when we come across anything that we smell, see, taste, hear, touch, those are our senses, and that affects our conscious mind. But
Right.
when we internalize those senses and that information is stored in our subconscious, it's actually stored as a perception of reality, not reality
Okay.
itself. So my subconscious is full of all these perceptions of stuff. So when I walk into a situation, I walk into a new year, I set goals, and I think in my head, the last time I set goals, it was miserable because I had to eat broccoli for 2 weeks.
Right.
You think I'm going to keep those goals?
No, no one likes that. It's not
No.
fun.
And so really there's this, it becomes an attitude. And what we're really talking about is accessing the subconscious. And what we've already touched on is that in order to change a habit, you have to
Mhm.
change an attitude. In order to
Right.
change an attitude, you have to change a thought. In order to actually be as good as your goals, you have to start with the thoughts that you have in your head, which
Right.
are created by these perceptions that you have of
Mhm.
reality. And it's going to take a crisis catalyst to say, okay, I'm going to be healthy this year.
Right.
I'm going to set forward a predetermined worthwhile goal, and it's going to take time.
It's going to take time. And as you were talking about that, it made me think of this. I was looking at my some of my notes, but what can happen whenever we approach our goals or ourselves, our perceptions of ourselves with neutral thinking? Because if we really think about it, if we are in any situation, if we can remove the judgment, we get to a neutral baseline.
Hmm.
It's not about being overly positive and optimistic, like I'm going to come into this and I'm going to work out 5 times a week and I'm not going to have any carbs and I'm going to be committed to this. And it's like this positive, optimistic, but if we can just stay neutral in our thinking, how much more we're going to be able to achieve long term because it's not based on a feeling. It's based on what you're talking about in this attitude and this mindset.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think some of it is, okay, what do I need to tell myself this year? Because
Yeah.
if what I've done is I've just simply written down some goals, that might be the shiny object that you mentioned before.
Mm-hmm.
But now what I need to continue to reinforce, even in my own self-talk, which I know we probably have some viewers who are thinking, great, they're going into psychobabble, but the self-talk, what do I say to myself in my head? The conversation around a goal is the pain that I'm feeling right now is going to be worth the payoff.
Correct.
The this is going to be a journey. The progress I'm making is worth it. I am a healthy person, therefore I eat healthy foods. I
Right.
am a healthy person, therefore I work out 4 times a week.
Correct. Mm-hmm.
I am a constant continual learner, therefore I read books. And whatever it is, you know, in the world of motivation, they call it affirmations. What
Right.
are the affirmations that you're speaking over yourself? And science backs up the legitimacy of them. It's
Mm-hmm.
not just like, hey, let's go walk on coals and not burn our feet. It's really about like what I set my mind to is a journey,
Mm-hmm.
a worthwhile, progressive journey that
Right.
the payoff in the end is going to be worth it, right?
Every time. Yeah. Go ahead.
Well, so now as individuals, we can set these individual goals, and
Mm-hmm.
I can be committed to changing physically or mentally or intellectually or financially or whatever like the holistic domains are that I want to set goals and improve. But you and I, we work with companies.
Right.
And so while we're talking about individual mindset, this is also important in companies, right?
Absolutely. And that's the part that makes me so excited is that whenever we really focus on holistic wellness individually, that's how real change can happen within groups of people and within teams of people. We see it so often within sports teams that it really just takes one person to make the decision or to make the commitment, and a lot of the team will follow. It's about leading people and leading them well. And so, whenever we make those decisions, as individuals, and especially if we're a leader and we're able to identify motivations within our teams, how much further we can actually go, and the
Hmm.
habits that we set for ourselves or for our teams, what can happen long term, instead of just being like, we show up, we clock in, we clock out, cool deal.
Yeah. I think that there's, on one hand, it's how do we begin to understand the motivations of each person on
Mm-hmm.
our team? I think it's also, as leaders, being really aware and perceptive of what are the attitudes and beliefs of your
Right.
team, and how are those turning into behaviors? Because really, like we set up the title of this show, being as good as your goals. Well, that's individually and that's team. A
It really is.
team
Mhm.
will only be as good as its goals, but you have to bring each individual on that team along.
Correct.
That,
Right.
that's why I keep thinking of coaches. Like a coach
Mm-hmm.
of a team knows that in order for us to be successful, I've got to raise the level of each individual.
Correct. Mm-hmm.
So I cut you off. You were going to say something.
No, I just, from thinking from my friends and people that I talk to with different corporate initiatives or goals that are set, we're talking about the shiny object. It oftentimes can feel very sporadic and chaotic because you're constantly throwing these goals out here, these initiatives, but as a company, are we really committed to those goals? Because otherwise you have people that are really facing not just burnout but bore out. They're just bored of constantly having to chase like whatever is being thrown in front of them, and there seems to be a lack of strategy. And so as leaders, like we are leading people to the goal, but it's ultimately the destination is over there. This is the path. And I can trust my leader in knowing that it's like, this is where we're at right now. But once we get here, then we go here, which is why I'm talking about habits being a baseline, because as a leader, that's how you really get momentum instead of just this hoorah kind of like, let's go excited thing. And then it's like, well, why are people leaving? Well, because you keep demanding more from them and it's all gas all the time. But like, where's the goal and the growth and the development? And you talk about like the behaviors of what that brings out in people, and really identifying within ourselves as leaders, how are we leading people? What are we leading them to long term? Not just right now in this quarter.
Yeah. And so I think like what I was thinking of when you were saying that is if you continue to just increase the goal, the habit that's created is do whatever it takes to reach the goal.
Correct.
And if that becomes the habit, we know that you can have like maladaptive performance in that. You can have people who are doing the opposite of what you want them to do, or you can have people who are going against the very values of your organization simply to achieve the goal, rather than thinking through, am I developing the proper habits along the way? So let's go back to most organizations, probably the founder, CEO, or leader of that organization walked in at the beginning of this year with a series of things, a handful of things that they would like to accomplish this year. Most people in the organization, and well, I'll just ask it as a question. Beamer, what do you think most people in an organization are thinking in these first couple weeks when a leader rolls out goals for the year? What are they thinking?
That's a really great question. I'm not entirely sure what they might be thinking. I would imagine.
I think that's the point, Beamer, is like, we don't know, but I think a lot of times people are thinking, well, good luck with that. He'll forget. He or she will forget him.
Yeah, like here we are again, like another year, every year we do the same spill, but it's supposed to feel new, but it's not, cool.
All right. So that's the attitude on most of us, because the perception that has been stored in our memory is every time this happens, the goals get forgotten. We end up doing something else. Therefore, here we are again.
Right.
So how do we help leaders change that this year? Let's get really practical with the time that we have left. And let's say, okay, we've got some goals. What are some practical ways that I can actually keep those in front of people, make sure they're aligned with motivations, and make sure we're creating this journey or progressive movement towards that goal versus just a shiny object? What would you say?
So I actually wrote this down earlier this morning, but there's this leadership theory called path to goal theory. And what leaders can do, there's 4 steps within it, is as a leader, first, you need to go to the executive team, your VP, whatever it is, and really identify what the goals are for this year, because then your team is able to build together like how they're going to help accomplish that. But ultimately, as a leader, 4 things. 1, define the goal. 2, clarify the path on how the team is going to get to the goal. 3, remove obstacles. And 4, provide support.
I like it. It seems pretty simple, pretty practical. Tell me number 2 again.
Clarify the path.
Okay. Clarifying the path. The one thing that I would add to this is oftentimes a leader feels like it's their responsibility to have ultimate clarity.
Correct.
And yet
you're not going to have it.
Yeah. Oftentimes that leader is also insecure because we can go like, well, I'm not very clear on this. I mean, I know what we want to accomplish, but I don't have clarity.
Right.
And so I think the thing that I would just add is include the team in establishing clarity.
Right. You're talking earlier about a coach. That's why coaches have additional coaching staff so that they don't have to know every single part of how to win.
Hmm. Yeah.
And so that's what our teams are built for. And what happens though is when leaders do that, because we may have some leaders on the call right now, managers that are like, yeah, but my people just aren't motivated. Well, give them something to contribute to. It's not always a financial benefit of like, I need to receive some kind of initiative in order to, or incentive, excuse me, in order to be excited to come to work or to contribute or to do something. But whenever we speak to you're talking about like the subconscious, to the truth of who someone is and putting them in position to, lead an initiative or create a system or a process, it speaks to the truth of who they are, which then gives them a sense of purpose. And
Hmm.
they're only going to continue to keep showing up and doing it because it's what lights them up, and motivates them individually.
Yeah. Well, and I guess what I would just add to that thought is as a leader, you have the opportunity to really dig down and understand the mentality of each person on your team. And so
Right.
while you're setting forth a goal and you're providing clarity on how you're going to get there and you're removing obstacles, um, I think one of the very practical things you can do, again, this is the Always About People show, is take the time to understand how that individual feels about the goal. How does that individual think they can contribute to it? I mean, maybe
Mhm.
even just ask them a question. How do you feel like you can contribute or you can add value to this initiative this year or this goal? Are there some ways that you can add value that we've never talked about before
Mhm.
or we've never thought about? Because that's now accessing a person's purpose and
Exactly.
a lot of their talents that we might not have uncovered.
Right. And ultimately, it's improving performance through development. So, as a leader, it's not my job to get the goal. As a leader, it's my job to improve in performance through developing my people so that they can accomplish it.
Hmm.
And it's not just looking at our millennial workforce. We are motivated. We want the career trajectory. We are thinking through like the financial benefits of growth within our careers. But what happens to our more senior employees that have been working at the same company for 20 years or have been here at this job for X amount of time, and they have all of this knowledge about the role in the job, but it seems, or the perception is, that the motivation is low and they're just like kind of showing up and doing it. And I think that we have a real opportunity as leaders, especially at the start of the year, to tap into that potential and finding out, what are they motivated by? What makes them light up outside of the workplace? What are they contributing their time and talents to? And does that fit within the context of some of the goals that we've set as an organization to to just like re-engage them as employees? Because this isn't just like getting millennials hyped or your more entry level employees ready to go. It really is about accomplishing the goal of the company and what it is that you want to do long term and the impact that you want to make, which requires everyone.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it comes back to the term coach
Yeah.
because like at least unless it's a player coach, a coach does not get on the field or the court or whatever sport you're playing. The coach is on the sideline and they have done whatever they can to motivate each individual to play at their best, to
Right.
compete at their best for the betterment of the team.
Right.
And that means that I've got to understand the individual talents that I have on the team. I've got to understand what motivates each person. I've got to understand what they like, their passions. I've got to understand their perceptions and their perspective that's stored in the subconscious that may keep them or hinder them from actually being motivated.
Right.
And that's the art of leadership.
Correct.
The art of leadership is taking the time to really figure out each person on my team. And it is art, not so much science. And so
Right.
this year, if I could just encourage the leaders who are watching, it is art. Take the time to understand how each person reacts to and interacts with the goals and the objectives that you've set. And think of yourself as a coach this year, that how can I improve the performance of each individual for the betterment of the team? Thoughts on that, Beamer?
I think that whenever we have leaders that are able to do that, or maybe you're not in a leadership position and you're like, man, I just wish my leader would listen to something like this. We have so much more control over our day to day and the environments that we put ourselves in. And we don't want to just tolerate the culture that's created, but really influence it. And so, whenever we make that decision, though, that's what makes work so much more enjoyable and enriching. And so, whenever we leave the workplace, we're all better because of it. And so, whenever we really commit to that mentality, I think that's what makes the world a better place.
Okay. So, Beamer, you just did the commercial for Always About People.
Oh,
And
nice.
yeah. No. Well, welcome to the team. But for those of you listening, the real mission, the purpose of Always About People is to help create cultures where people thrive. And the core belief that both Beamer and I have is that, unfortunately, most of us will spend most of our waking hours in the workplace and not become better as a result.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what I believe is leading to the Great Resignation. This is what's leading to stagnation. It's what's leading to boredom. And yet, I believe, Beamer, you and I, we are called to help change this. And we'll do whatever we possibly can to help create environments where people can thrive, not just at work, but they actually leave work and are better in whatever other roles they play in life because of the environment that's created at work. And it is such a strong desire of mine. And you said it first. So I guess welcome to the team, Beamer. Let's go do this together.
Let's go. And break.
All right. So to circle back, this episode was being as good as your goals. And we know that wrapped up in that sort of definition is the power of the mind and what you set your mind to. It's the image, not just a shiny object, but what's that goal and how can you progressively move towards that goal? How can you change the habits and the attitudes and the beliefs that have been created and stored in your subconscious? How can you create these catalysts for change? These moments where the benefit of change is far greater than remaining the same. And then as leaders, how can we encourage the people on our teams to achieve better? How can we take the time to understand them? How can we motivate them to something great? Because when we put a goal in front of people and then ask them for their inclusion in it or their thoughts on it, and we collaborate with them in achieving, they're going to be motivated. They're going to be excited about it, and they're
the momentum, not the goal.
So being as good as your goals. I think my encouragement to all of you who are listening would be, let's not just make 2022 like every other year where you've set some goals and then a month or so in, you're just sort of, you don't even remember where they are. Let's make this year a time where we're really looking at those goals. We're putting them in place. We're coming back to them. We're reminding people about them. We're putting them in front of people on a regular basis. We're reminding ourselves about them individually. And I think it'll be a great year. Beamer, any last minute thoughts or comments?
Just happy to be here, excited for all that is ahead and all that we are going to be able to do this year. And thank you to everyone who has commented within the thread for our show. We'll be here again next Tuesday. I will not be. Chris will be here. Always About People will be here. But we're excited for everything. It's great.
Why won't you be here, Beamer?
I don't know. Maybe I will be here. Who knows?
Listen, if we did a poll, I bet you people would want to hear from you and not me.
That's crazy.
Yeah, but no, we just thank you to those of you who have tuned in. Thanks to those of you who watch on a consistent basis. We're glad that you're a part of this. I hope that you're taking something practical away, that this is not just us talking, but that we're actually giving you practical insights that can impact your organization, your leadership, or the people around you. Again, our passion, our mission, our purpose is to create cultures where people thrive. And we know that if we can keep giving practical insights around leadership and people, we believe that that will change people's lives. So thanks for tuning in. We are here every Tuesday, whatever platform you're watching on, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube. We'd love for you to sign up, subscribe, like, do whatever you need to do to be reminded of these shows. We'll keep trying to bring you very practical show topics. And Beamer, thanks for joining me on this first of 2022.
It's been
and
fun.
Thanks to those of you who have commented. Again, like Beamer said, we appreciate you engaging. It's way more fun this way because both of us are talking into a screen right now, and it's way more fun to engage with people. So again, thank you. That's another episode of the Always About People show. Beamer, you're awesome. Thanks.
Bye, everyone.